We ready? All right. Good afternoon and welcome to Fairmont High School. My name is Dan Von Handorf. I'm the principal at Kettering Fairmont High School. We are excited to host a debate here. Part of our mission statement is to develop contributing citizens in society. And so there are a couple people that I need to thank to make this possible. First, Mike Bach came last week and asked if we would be willing to host. And certainly since that is part of our mission here at Fairmont, we are gracious to do that. Also, we have a number of students in attendance that are going to be helping out with the debate today, and our interactive media students are taping this so that we can post it both on My Valley Cable Council and also onto the website. And so, with no further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to one of our social studies teachers here at Fairmont High School, David Faber, who will be moderating for this afternoon's debate. Mr. Faber.
Thank you. Welcome to the debate. Before we begin, let me quickly tell you about the format of the debate, and then I'll introduce the two candidates. This will be a Lincoln-Douglas style debate, where the first half of the debate, the candidates will present their own ideas. They will not be questioned by me or by anyone in the audience. We'll start with 7-minute segments, then 5, 3, and 2-minute segments. Mr. Butler won the coin toss. He elected to go second, so Ms. Gentry will be the first to speak. Briefly, let me introduce the two candidates. Ms. Gentry is a resident of Oakwood. She earned her bachelor's degree from Kalamazoo College and a law degree from Yale University. She currently works as an attorney and a partner at Porter, Wright, Morris & Arthur. She's a Democrat, and she has a website, www.carolinegentry.com. Mr. Butler is also a resident of Oakwood. He has a bachelor's degree from the U.S. Naval Academy, a master's of art degree from the University of Maryland, and a law degree from the University of Cincinnati. He currently holds the seat in the 41st District in the State House of Ohio, and he also works as an attorney at Thompson Hine. He's a Republican, and he also has a website, www.butlerforohio.com. And again, we'll begin with Ms. Gentry.
Remind the audience about no applause.
Good point. Thank you, Mike. We'd like to remind the audience, please hold your applause until the end of the debate. We'd like them to be able to speak without any interruptions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to Kettering High School for having us, and thank you, audience, for being here. This is an exciting opportunity for both of us, and I appreciate it. I want to talk about 4 different issues today, which I think are the most important issues facing our state. And in order, they are school funding, our state budget deficit, local government funding, and creating economic growth. I'm going to start with school funding. My belief is that we need to make our system of school funding constitutional. Since 1851, our Ohio Constitution has required the General Assembly to provide enough funding, and it says through taxation or otherwise, to secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. So for over 150 years, we have put a premium on funding our schools. Unfortunately, we've fallen short in the last 15 years. In 1997, the Ohio Supreme Court declared that Ohio's system of school funding was unconstitutional. There were a variety of reasons for that, but 2 of them still exist today, and they're the things that need to be fixed. The first problem is something called residual budgeting. And essentially what it means is that the state doesn't figure out what the cost of an education is and then allocate that money to schools. That's the way they should do it. But instead of doing that, they pay for everything else, look at what's left in their budget, and then give that to the schools. The Ohio Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. The second problem is that we over-rely on local property taxes to fund our schools. The problem with that is that wealthier districts get more money than low-income districts. And that's not hard to figure out why. First of all, wealthier districts have voters who are more likely to vote for levies. They have higher tax values for their homes. They're more able to pay property taxes. But it's even worse than that. Even if every school district levied the same amount of taxes on its citizens, the same tax rate on its citizens, wealthier school districts would still get more money because the values are higher. So low-income school districts start out at a disadvantage that they can never overcome. Both of those factors make our school system, funding system, unconstitutional, and it's been that way for more than 15 years. The Ohio Supreme Court has held 3 times that it's unconstitutional and the General Assembly needs to fix it. It held that in 1997, 2000, and 2002. So has the General Assembly fixed it? No. They came the closest to fixing it under Governor Strickland when they finally adopted something called the evidence-based model, which would allow them to figure out what the cost of an education really is, and then they could actually budget to allocate that money to schools. Unfortunately, when Governor Kasich and the General Assembly, including my opponent, came into office in 2011, they voted to scrap the evidence-based model. It's one of the first things they did in early 2011. It's gone, and it wasn't replaced with anything. Governor Kasich has said that he'll think about replacing it maybe in 2013 or 2014, but right now we have no model for funding schools. We are as far from a constitutional system as we have ever been. So we start with an unconstitutional system, but then it gets even worse. The funding system for our schools has gotten dire, truly dire, in the last 2 years, and there are 5 reasons why that's true. The first reason is that federal funds have been significantly cut, including some stimulus money that was allocated to the states to pay for teachers. That money was spent and it's gone. The second reason is that the state has cut its share of funding to public schools, because in part of the budget deficit, which I'll address a little later. The third reason is that schools also lost a significant amount of funding due to a change in Ohio tax law that cut a very important business tax, the tangible personal property tax. That tax had provided a significant amount of money to schools. It was phased out, I believe, as of 2008. The state then kept reimbursing schools for part of it, but now that money's gone. The revenue from the tangible personal property tax was supposed to be replaced. It was supposed to be replaced by a new business tax called the commercial activity tax. But the revenue from that tax has not come in where it was hoped to come in. It's far too low to replace the tangible personal property tax. So that's another hit that schools have taken. The fourth hit that schools have taken is that local property taxes have gone down significantly because of falling home values, which is not all that surprising, but it was an additional shock to the system. For instance, Centerville City Schools will lose $1 million per year because of lower home values. Kettering will lose $1.72 million per year. And finally, charter schools and vouchers also divert money from schools. So it's a difficult time to lose revenue, and schools have already been slashing their budgets. Centerville, for example, has slashed $22 million from its budget since 2008. There isn't a lot left to cut. And on top of it all, this General Assembly is imposing more unfunded mandates on teachers. 2 examples: the 3rd grade reading guarantee, which is going to cost a significant amount to implement, and then the new evaluation system, which requires in-person evaluation so many times per year per teacher. That's also costly. All of these problems add up to a system that is at a breaking point. It's been unconstitutional. The funding problems are even worse than it's been. So your legislators' most important job is to fix the system of school funding. That is their most important job, and that's why I put this first. How do they do it? By raising an adequate amount of funds at the state level. That's the only way to fix the system, make it constitutional, and ensure a stable source of funding. I believe that we need to look at raising the state income tax, the state sales tax, shale taxes on oil and gas, or some combination, and using that money to fund schools. Now, raising taxes is always difficult in an economic climate like we have now, so at the same time, we should lower local property taxes. Simultaneously, we should increase the state taxes and roll back local property taxes. That will give homeowners some relief right away, which they could use. It will be more fair because it will spread the tax burden among more people, and it's going to bring our system into compliance with the Ohio Constitution. When I'm elected, I will fight to do that. Thank you.
Well, thanks again. I'm Jim Butler. I'm currently the representative for the 37th House District, which includes this area. I just wanted to first say that I appreciate, especially the students, for coming in I understand you're getting some extra credit, which is always good too, and good to have that incentive. But also, I know you guys were really interested in seeing this, so thank you very much for coming. I'd also like to thank Principal Von Handorf and also our moderator David Faber for moderating, and especially I'd like to thank Mike Bach for organizing this. That's something that we have been talking about for a while, and it is a very interesting format. And I'll get into a little bit of history about that later. If anybody's ever read the Lincoln Douglas debates, they're quite long, and it's a little bit different than this format. The way I became a state representative is I was appointed in January of 2011 when Peggy Lehner was appointed to the state senate. And she was appointed after John Husted was elected Secretary of State. So various things happened there to where I was appointed. I'm married to Melissa and I have 3 daughters, twins that are 7 years old and a 3-year-old. Just by way of background, I grew up in Washington Courthouse, Ohio, attended the public schools there, which I think are excellent. I always wanted to serve my country, so I wanted to go into the military as a younger person, so I went to the U.S. Naval Academy, as was mentioned. After I got out of the Naval Academy, I went to flight school and was fortunate enough to be selected to fly the F-14 Tomcat. When I got out of the Navy, I worked for a couple years for Eli Lilly in the private sector, and then I went to law school at the University of Cincinnati, and as was mentioned, I'm an attorney at Thompson Hine here in town, and I had been doing that for about 5 years until in 2010, I felt like I had to serve again, and I always wanted to continue to serve my country, and the reason is because Ohio is really dying. It was just, the country was not doing well, but Ohio specifically was really doing poorly. And we were 48th in job creation. We had lost over 400,000 jobs from 2006 to 2010 and 600,000 jobs over the past decade from 2001 to 2010. Our unemployment rate was higher than the national average. It was 9.6%, and the national unemployment rate was 9.5%. Our credit rating was negative, and we had 87 cents in our rainy day fund. That's our savings account for the state, only 87 cents. Somebody donated 87 more cents to say that they doubled the rainy day fund as kind of a joke, but it was sad though. And most Ohioans thought that we were on the wrong track, and I agreed. I didn't think that we had really seen any leadership from state and national leaders. And in terms of economic development, we saw a bevy of different leaders that kind of resort to some pandering in terms of saying, well, we're really great, here in this area. All we have to do is tell people how great we are, and then businesses and people will come. Well, that hasn't worked for 2 decades, where Ohio's population has also been not rising as fast as the national average, resulting in a loss of 2 congresspeople. So things were just really bad. And when I came in 2011 and I was sworn in, we had some tough choices to make because we had an $8 billion budget deficit. We started with a lot of different innovative ideas. We had the Common Sense Initiative to lower the just really ridiculous regulations out there. Not to say that regulations are bad, but some of them just don't make sense. And the Common Sense Initiative takes a look at the regulations that don't make sense and that have an adverse impact on business and seeks to change them. Invest Ohio is an idea that was implemented to invest in small and medium-sized businesses because that's where the job growth is. Jobs Ohio, in terms of attracting businesses and being able to move quickly to attract businesses to the state instead of what we've had before, which is really a lot of bureaucracy. And we also reformed, we had several reforms in the healthcare area, including the Passport program, which allows seniors that want to stay in their homes instead of being forced to go into a nursing home. As I mentioned, the biggest thing we had was an $8 billion budget deficit. And by way of comparison, Florida had a $1.7 billion budget deficit, and their economy is 50% bigger than ours. So it was a huge problem. And we had some tough choices to make, as has been mentioned. And have to be some cuts across the board, really, which included schools in terms of the tangible personal property reimbursement, which I'll get into later. But a lot of tough cuts. But it worked. I think, and the statistics show, when you really want to compare how a state's doing, you have to compare it to the rest of the country. And as I mentioned, we were doing worse than the rest of the country in 2010, and now we're doing a lot better because we're 4th in job creation. We're 1st in the Midwest in job creation. Ohioans have created over 100,000 jobs, and our unemployment rate is 7%, and the national rate just came out today, it's 7.9%. Our credit rating was upgraded, and we have nearly $500 million in our rainy day fund. So it went from 87 cents to $500 million. And most Ohioans think we're on the right track. So by way of comparison, another state out there decided to raise taxes, as my opponent had mentioned wanting to do. They actually had a $7 billion budget deficit, and they decided to raise taxes. And they raised taxes for 47% on businesses and 67% on the citizens of Illinois. And that resulted in their unemployment rate rising after they did that from 8.7% to 10%. Businesses were flocking rushing to get out of Illinois, including Sears, which we were trying to recruit to come to Ohio, and it turned out that Illinois had to offer them a bunch of tax breaks in order to stay in there. Moody's actually had them at the lowest possible credit rating of any state in the country after that. So that just shows you that raising taxes doesn't necessarily result in more revenue, because they still have a $7 billion budget deficit, probably worse when it comes out next year. And we've seen in Chicago with the strikes with Rahm Emanuel raising or cutting with local governments and clashing with the teachers union, where Illinois is going, because they're still facing the same problems that we faced in 2011, and I think we won't have to face next year. So Ohio's doing better, but I also want to say that we could do a lot better. We could be the greatest, most prosperous state in this country, and we have a long way to go to do that. And I'll get into that a little bit later about what we need to do, but that's where we are right now. Thanks.